Dan?
Guys,
I love you.
We have a guest here tonight that I'd like to talk to.
Needs no introduction.
We're going to talk to him about the emerging world of new media because all media is new to him because he was there at the actual birth of fucking television, writing the when it was all beginning. He's created. He's developed over 100 shows. I don't even know how
Name
that's
them.
possible.
All 100 of them.
Some of them are more noteworthy than others. All in the Family, Sanford and Son, Good Times, Mary Hartman, Fernwood Tonight.
Fernwood
The Jeffersons?
The Jeffersons I skipped right over as one of the, let's just bring them out.
Let's hear it for him.
Yeah. Norman Lear.
All of you millennials have no idea how fucking awesome this is. You have no idea. This is really cool. Dan,
Thanks,
take
Rob.
it away.
Thanks, Rob.
Please do not screw this up, Dan.
All right. So you have this documentary coming out that's about you. Did you have a hand in any of it editorially? Or?
Like Harmontown.
Absolutely, two women made it. They're two great women.
And they you had an agreement with them, like I'm sure they're very reverent of you, but in order to make I got a sneak peek at it, it's a very powerful, emotional portrait.
They did a great job. It's an American master, so PBS didn't want anybody to see. I mean, it's a rule of the game, and they made sure I saw none of it.
Right. And then you finally saw it, and how'd you feel?
I saw it with it opened Sundance. It opened the festival, so that was a great compliment to the film. And I saw it with my family, so I was just wondering how's my wife like it? My kids, I have 6 kids.
Mm-hmm.
They were all there. What are they thinking? I have yet to really sit down and see it.
I mean, one of the more powerful emotional themes that keeps coming up is about your dad. But let's put a pin in that. Because the really interesting thing to me is that, I mean, your career in television before it's almost a footnote in an equally amazing just lifetime. It describes you. You describe yourself in your book sitting with that crystal radio. Okay, do you want to talk about that for a moment? That first experience you had with you don't. do you want? Do
you want to sing about it?
You know about it?
A little song?
No, do you know about the crystal radio set he's talking about?
I do not. No.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Why don't you tell me, Mr. Lear?
My dad went to prison when I was 9 years old. And when I was 8 and a half, tending toward 9, we made a crystal radio set. It was one of the best times I can remember having with him. And he was gone, and I'm fooling with the little crazy. He had headphones and a little, what they called a cat's whisker over this little crystal. And if you caught a signal, you were lucky. And I caught a signal, and I was unlucky because the signal I caught had a guy by the name of Father Coughlin. He was a priest who had a big radio show, and he was a madman and a vicious anti-Semite and anti-Roosevelt, and he liked the things he heard beginning in Germany. I'm talking about 1931. So, Yeah,
and you're a
1931,
kid of 9 years old, and you're listening to this guy.
I'm listening to this guy, and he hates Jewish people. And it was the first time I knew anything about anti-Semitism, which it didn't take me long to realize, if I was hurting as a result of a Father Coughlin, these people I didn't see a lot of at that time in my high school and my school, black people. I started to see a lot of them a little bit later, and I had an automatic affinity for everybody that was suffering even more than we were.
I thought that was an interesting part of your.
But I want to make mention of we had civics classes in those years, so we were learning at that tender age about the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, all of those guarantees that this country was going to protect all of us, and we would have equal protection under the law. And that saved my ass emotionally.
You mean it protected
how do
you from the
save your
fear?
ass emotionally? I don't know, but
Do you mean listening to this guy and feeling you might have felt hunted
my
and
country,
endangered if it weren't for civics
my country
class?
said he was evil and wrong, and it, we don't have civics classes in public schools anymore. They cut that like they cut the arts and music and all those things that bring us together, make us feel as one. Seem to go first.
Something we hung on to is the Pledge of Allegiance, which you mentioned in this really stirring, patriotic portrait of the America that you belonged to at that time, an America that hadn't entered World War II yet. You talked about patriotism. You talked about being at parades with your grandfather. You talked about what it felt like to be proud to be an American back then. And one thing that you mentioned that caught my attention was this was before they had gratuitously added "under God" to the end of the Pledge of Allegiance. Mm-hmm. When did they add that? I could have looked it up, but I figured you were coming.
I think it was 1936. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's recently they added that.
I mean, there's a huge irony to that. This idea that this is one of the dragons that you fought your whole career, and very capably. It's this weird. This morality concept that some people say has something to do with Christian values, which you would not argue with. I don't get the impression, but what you would argue with is that being shoved down people's throat and unduly influencing elected office and things like that. Which is why in the 80s, when the moral majority started,
that's when I started People for the American Way. To fight the moral majority, Pat Robertson, Jerry Falwell, Jimmy Swaggart, all those guys that were building these giant congregations, insisting that you were a good American or a bad American. I mean, you were a good Christian or a bad Christian, depending on your political point of view.
Right.
I didn't start People for the American Way at the beginning. I just did a 60-second television spot with a working guy sitting on a piece of factory equipment and saying that he and his family sit around the dinner table, breakfast table, talking politics all the time. His wife and his kids disagree about all kinds of things, and he disagrees. But here come these ministers, he said, on radio and television telling you you're a good Christian or a bad Christian, depending on your if you agree with them, you're a good Christian. Well, I agreed with them on a lot of political stuff, so I was a good Christian. My wife was a bad one. And I got to tell you, I know my wife is a hell of a much better Christian than I am. And he winds up saying, so there's got to be something wrong when anybody tells you you are a good or a bad Christian, depending on your political point of view. That's not the American way, he said.
It also ties into something you talked about comedy when you were in the part where you're talking about Jerry Lewis, which is we could start to talk about your early career, which gets pretty fascinating. But when you stopped while talking about Jerry Lewis and talked about the way you put it was, if you're if you're comedically empowered, I'm paraphrasing you. You have a once you become so popular for making people laugh that you can do whatever you want next, you can continue to be a clown, or you can rise to the papacy. And you said, and that idea that certainty is the enemy in comedy as well. That, not to put words in your mouth, but that Jerry Lewis being an example of somebody who became so certain of himself and his sense of control, his need for control, that maybe he started to get a little unfunny.
He became a kind of pope figure.
Mm-hmm.
He makes his own point. I don't have to talk about that. If you've ever seen the years of the muscular dystrophy telethon, you can watch him at the beginning being the most hilarious 35 years ago or however many. He was the funniest man I ever met. And we all but died laughing. Ed Simmons, my partner, and I. And then little by little, he became, he knew everything. And every year he did that telethon as the master of ceremonies. And you can see him change over the years and become that figure. When they split up, everybody thought Jerry was going to have a huge, huge career. What was Dean going to do without Jerry? And Dean did better.
Yeah.
And now I guess you now tell him about the birthday candle. Jerry Lewis is
as funny a moment as I can ever recall.
Please.
This blew my mind.
Please tell this.
We were doing, I think, the third or fourth Colgate Comedy Hour, and the guys were in Chicago. So they were at the Chez Paris in Chicago, and we were staying at and I forget the name of the hotel, the fanciest hotel in...
Drake? The Drake?
Did you say Drake?
The Drake.
No.
Was it the Drake?
No.
This is the worst game show I've ever been on.
It was Jerry's birthday, and Eddie and I, we were on the same floor, and we went to pick him up. We were all going out to dinner. We were going to meet Dean in the lobby, and we knocked on his door. Again, this was his birthday, and come in. And so we opened the door. It was pitch dark, and we tiptoed in the darkness. And suddenly there was a lit candle. I mean, a match lit. And as the match descended, we saw him with an erection and sitting naked with an erection and a baby candle in it.
Wait, in it?
Singing happy birthday to you, happy birthday.
Wait,
Jerry Lewis.
Norman.
The king of comedy and the king of birthdays.
I have a couple follow-up questions on that. Yes. How long do you think he'd been waiting there for that? Do you think it was like
Long
5
enough
minutes?
to get an erection.
I think he could have heard the knock and run into the
Oh, really? The candle was in?
The candle, no, he'd have to be sitting there a little while with the candle.
Yeah, there was preparation there.
Now,
How long was the candle in his dick?
just so you guys know, November 12th.
That's when it took place?
No, that's my birthday.
He doesn't.
You're invited, Norman.
If the lights are out, don't worry about it.
Yeah, if the lights are out, please come inside.
I always wonder when I hear these old Hollywood.
But I have to go back to say that there was never anybody funnier than he was in those years. And that was a hilarious prank among thousands of hilarious pranks.
No, you literally truly loved him. I mean, you say so. You praise him to no end.
He had a little play. He was on Amalfi Drive in Pacific Palisades, and he had a playhouse next door. I mean, in the back, the Garon Playhouse, named after his sons, Gary and Ronnie. And Eddie and I he'd be behind the bar, getting us we were not drinkers, but, in the afternoon. And we'd say, you're 86 years old. So he'd become 86 years. 86 years old with an Italian accent, and you're blind in one eye. You're hearing your aunt call you from another room, and there's a baby crying, and we'd just throw things at him. And he'd do everything you asked him to do, and combine them, and until we fell apart.
Yeah. I didn't mean to bring him up in a bad light when I brought him up immediately. It was the connection between in politics and in comedy, certainty being the enemy. And it was curious when you watch today's comedy, like it's just really like this. Our country loves its comedy, and we're a very successful country, and our comedy is very successful, and it's institutional. And to what extent, you very quickly gravitated towards controversy in your comedy. You went out of your way. You went it when you could have easily taken the path most traveled. You tended to end up on projects that were causing letters and to be written.
That wasn't the intention at all. There was no such intention.
Not like you were Geraldo Rivera, but you wanted people to have a discussion.
Wait, what got that laugh?
I said it's not like you were Geraldo Rivera or something. I'm not saying you were like a controversy junkie, like you wanted to make headlines with your shenanigans.
We were. I learned. I mentioned my father going away. When my father went away, my mother was selling all the furniture. She had to get out of the house. She couldn't live there in shame anymore, and. It was like 2 nights after they had taken him away, and the house is full of people who were looking at the furniture. Especially, killed me to see somebody thinking of buying my father's red leather chair, from which he controlled the dial of the radio and so forth, like Archie Eves all those years later. But somebody, an adult, buying this stuff I couldn't bear him to start with, puts his hand on my shoulder and says, well, you're the man of the house now. So under those circumstances, you're looking at a kid in that situation, and you're telling him he's the man of the house. Somehow, I got a sense of the foolishness of the human condition. That was just, in its own stupid, ugly way, hilarious. And I got it, and that's what we wrote out of. There wasn't any subject that we ever dealt with that wasn't in the neighborhood. They weren't talking about down the street, across the street. Women went through what women went through, men and, parents and their kids, the kids in school. All the things we did were just out of what we were reading about or hearing about or living through.
When you were doing All in the Family, like in some of the more, some of the topics you dealt with and that were very controversial for the compared to what else was going on the air, did you get a lot of interference from the network or studio at the time? Did they have any say on the set, like during the week of rehearsals?
Yeah, no, they it took me 3 years to get the show on because ABC, who bought it the first time, laughed like hell but wouldn't put it on.
There were two pilots for All in the Family.
There were three.
Three.
There were 2 pilots and then the on-the-air show. The 2 pilots had Gene Stapleton and Carol O'Connor, the 2 leads, and different young couple. I kept thinking I could improve the young couple, and happily, it took 3 years and 3 makings, tapings, before I got Rob Reiner.
So he wasn't your. You described you were friends with Carl Reiner, and you described Rob Reiner being hilarious on the floor because he had been raised around comics.
My oldest daughter, they're both 68 years old, and my oldest daughter and he were playing together, and he was teaching her how to play jacks, and because he had been 8 years old or 7 years old, hanging around his father and his father's Jewish friend, comedians. He was talking like this. That's the way you do it. You punch the ball and then you pick up the ball.
But you said he wasn't doing impressions of anybody in particular. He just adopted a comedian's personality. Right?
He grew up around Sid Caesar's, the whole cast of.
But he wasn't just parroting them. He had affected their language.
It rubbed off. Totally.
I wanted to talk. Well, what I was leading you down the road of was just to get the Master Jedi to make a quick commentary about today's comedy. But I'm not going to lead you to that whatever. Who cares? But because I was just a little curious about what somebody for whom politics and comedy were both like inseparable. Because when you look at today, when everything seems decidedly non-controversial in terms of comedy. When
not
talk
if
show
you're
hosts,
watching South Park.
Well, yeah, South Park is amazing. Yes,
Do you watch South Park?
I do watch South. Well, I watch it when I can. There's so very much.
He officiated Trey Parker's wedding.
Really?
I just read.
Amazing. That's amazing. That's
And
amazing.
you've sat in their writer's room, right?
Fantastic.
He does bar mitzvahs. He does quinceañeras.
I can be at anybody's house tomorrow morning.
But
Competitive rates.
Your career began. So we've touched on your dad. So there's this part. It's amazing in your book how you parse it out. You even in your book, you're stirred by this and confused by your relationship with your father. And
Can we find out who it is?
Yeah. Who is it?
I don't know. I gotta find out.
Please be Rob Reiner.
I have 6 kids, and I always tell them.
Please be Rob Reiner.
well, if Rod Serling wrote this, that's your dad.
It is Brianna Lear.
It's Jerry Lewis's lawyer.
Sorry, bud.
It's Jerry Lewis's lawyer.
No, it is a daughter at Vassar who just got something she sought, and she couldn't be happier about it. Oh, thank you.
You said you have 6 kids. You said.
I have 6 kids. My kids range from 21 to 68.
Yeah, you have a daughter.
Try that on for size.
Yeah.
You have a daughter that's 50 years
And
old.
I did that with small hands.
So when for those people, those young people planning to have kids, it's good to have them 50 years apart, right? Because then the older one doesn't pick on the little one as much. It's less bullying.
They're all, may I say, they're all very close.
Who's the worst one?
I'm the worst one.
So your career starts as like your childhood is sort of like your feelings about your dad are so prominent, and the thing that you later reveal after you've talked about your exploits for a while, and you touch back on it, and you say in the book, there's a word I haven't been using, and that word is fraud. Like I talked about the trouble that my dad got into. So your dad's like sort of inauthenticity was a huge factor in your life that was very confusing to you. You loved the guy. So then he goes away. You let's put a pin in World War II for a second, which you fought in. It's impossible to interview you, and I'm a terrible interviewer, and you are impossible to. You'd have to take just any chunk. Just talk about civil liberties for 6 hours. But your writing career. I mean, you initially wanted to be a publicist. You wanted to be.
I had one uncle who used to flick me a quarter when he saw me. And I just got a picture of him today from his granddaughter, someplace in Maine, where she went for whatever reason. She went to her mother's. Her grandmother just died. And she was going through all this stuff, and she came across some pictures of this uncle that used to flick me a quarter.
And what was he flicking you a quarter for? What had you done that was so
Nothing.
great?
He just liked me and flicked me a quarter.
Oh, was it?
That was my role model, an uncle who could flick a quarter. I wanted to grow up to be a guy who could do that.
You
I have
wanted to
a
beat
niece
him.
right
You didn't
now.
want more quarters
And I
from
can do
him.
that.
You can still flick a quarter?
What?
Can we get a quarter here?
See, I have a niece, but I don't think a quarter would work anymore. I think that you
Why? Because they added zinc
No,
or something?
well,
Somebody give this man a quarter.
I remember sitting on a fire escape with my mother, my father, and my sister on a hot summer's night, and the conversation for 20 minutes was whether they could afford to give me a dime or a quarter. I can't remember what that was, to go get a pint of ice cream at the drugstore. That's how much a dime or a quarter.
You got ice cream from the drugstore?
Yes, from the drugstore.
That's the best place.
Before there was ice cream.
I used to in high school. I would go to Thrifty's drugstore and get ice cream when I was a kid.
Okay, so you kind of you
Don't interrupt my ice cream
Talk
story.
about the war.
your entry into writing.
You were talking about the war.
Well, I was put a pin in the war because we'll be here all night. I mean, we could go back to it in a second. But you come out of the war interested in the world of publicity. You end up writing just as if it was a moving job. It was a way to keep from going broke. But the audacity of you that this was it. Danny Thomas what was your first gig that who was the guy that you called?
Danny Thomas.
Did you want to just tell that story really quickly? This is because
quickly?
take your time. I just like people. I'm on panels and people say, "How do you break into the business?" Listen to this method.
I read in Variety or the Reporter that Danny Thomas's agent was William Morris' office. I had an idea for Danny Thomas. Called his office at 12:30 or so. Hopefully, hoping that he would be at lunch. Got his secretary on the phone. He was at lunch, and was talking as fast as I could. I said, "I'm Norman Lear. I just spent 3 days with Danny Thomas. I'm writing a big story for the New York Times. I'm at the airport. I'm going back now. Hope they're calling my plane. I've got to talk to him. I have 2 questions. I'm going to write it on the plane and file it when I get to." And she gave me his number. So I called his number, and he answered the phone. He was alone in the house with his accompanist. I even remember the guy's name. Wally Pop was his name. And he was going to appear at Ciro's, a nightclub, a very famous nightclub on the Strip, the very next night at a Friars Frolic. It was a show business event. Everybody there would know his material, he said. And he was looking for something in his, that went back a few years that they hadn't heard. And I said, well, this is brand new. They haven't heard it. And he said, it has to be short. I said, it's very short. Whatever I had to say. He said, all right, get your ass over here. So I said, well, this is like, 1:15. I said, well, we'll be there. I can be there by 4:00. He's mad, and he says, you say you're calling from Hollywood? I'm in Beverly Hills. I'm 20 minutes away. What do you mean 4:00? But we hadn't written this thing yet. So he said, if you're not over here by 3 or whatever the hell. He said, we got there. He read it. He liked it. It told very easily. And he did it the next night, and he killed. And we were in the kitchen at Ciro's, peeking out through a curtain, and saw him just. And I got a call the next morning. Could we be in New York? Do we write television? I said, yes, we write television.
Hey, everybody, why not? It was new.
Norman, I'm sorry. How old are you at this time?
I'm 29. 29 or 28, something like that.
Amazing.
He had already, fought in World War II.
Yes, okay.
Voluntarily.
Was Danny Thomas was he already on? Was Father Knows Best? Right? Was that on or no? Was that later?
No, it's later.
Yeah, later.
No, it's Father Knows Best was later. He was a nightclub comic. Okay. He was a nightclub raconteur. It's like nobody else. He told long stories. And
I like his style.
lots of them biographical, and there was nobody else like Danny Thomas. He could tell a story for 8 minutes and get 1,000 laughs along the way.
Wow.
So we wrote this story for him.
So that audacity, which you have this remarkable combination of audacity and acquiescence, which I have a question about in a second. I swear it's going to be great. But what this?
Wait till you hear this question.
But in those moments, like your career beginning like that, just because by sheer force of will and through, let's call it dishonesty. I mean, it's a negative word, but like you were lying to Danny Thomas, you lied to him, you lied to his agent, you lied to him on the phone. You were a con artist in that moment, and you're oh no, Norman, whoa. Well, how do you reconcile that with this already irreconcilable relationship with the spirit of your dad?
I was all about doing good for Danny Thomas.
Right.
I had something for him he couldn't get anywhere else in the world.
Well, that was going to be my unforgettable question that I was about to ask. Is this unique blend of audacity plus acquiescence? My suspicion was that it's actually a surplus of personal security, that you're so good that you don't mind listening to other people's needs. And
this is a little piece. I've done a few interviews over the years. This is the first time anybody called attention to that. You're absolutely right to call attention to it, but it is the first time I'm thinking about it. I lied to the secretaries, telling her who I was, and I lied to him. Well, I didn't really lie to him, but I didn't say yes or no as to whether I had written it. But let's call it that lie. Now I have to make my peace with that.
Well, oh, gosh, no, it wasn't a crime. You did.
What did you do?
You did fine.
Dan, what did you do?
I broke Norman Lear.
What did you do? Oh my God!
I've said like
It's all been a sham, Lear.
What did you do, Dan? Dan!
Your stories about your dad make it sound like your dad was just bad at something that you turned out to be very good at. Like you.
No,
like you.
My father was selling fake bonds.
Right. He was. You use the word fraud later, and it's like hard. It sticks in your throat to say the word fraud.
Yeah, because I'd rather call him a scoundrel.
Right. And so. Well, I guess.
Or a rascal. That's a good one. I love
a rascal.
But it's okay. Well, we don't have to. I mean, I'm not Freud. I'm not gonna like. I just. Yeah. I guess my answer is you hadn't thought about it. Like how that sort of applies when you're going like. Yeah, well, I'm at a gas station. That's why I'll be 3 hours. Okay, I have to write this thing, which is like I've done that a lot too. And I guess I wonder, like, for you, is writing, is it a magical thing that people are born to do, or is it a means to an end and you could do anything you want because you're a god? It's a loaded question. No matter which you answer, you sound like a prick.
I sound like a what?
I said if you took either of those options, you'd sound like a prick. I guess I created a trap there. I just made it. Is writing this? Did writing become? You weren't.
No, you have to. In order to write, you have to be a prick.
Thank God. Well, yeah, if you met Vince Gilligan, he ruins it for everybody, right? Oh, Vince is so nice.
He's really nice. He's
He is
super nice guy. Really nice. Hope to work with him.
I think my question is writing in the blood, or is writing a just another thing you can learn to do, like juggling, or?
No, I think writing is its own. A writer pays attention to life. I'm not with the conscience of forethought, but differently from the average person. Because I've spent a lot of years when I wasn't writing and a lot of years when I was paying more attention to everything when I was writing. And I'm doing that now. We're doing a new show. This is Brent Miller sitting here. We're doing a new show together. And next to him is Kiyomi. And when you call me, she says hello.
Yeah, well, I'll give props to it's Steve Levy who hunted Kiyomi down. Is it Kiyomi?
Yes.
Yeah, I said on this stage it was a fantasy to have you up here, and Steve Levy went and made it a reality so I could show what a bad interviewer I am. But because it would have been fine as a fantasy, but here we are. And yes, this you're doing a thing for Netflix that sounds really interesting. It's sort of I don't know if you're offended by the word reboot, but you're revisiting One Day at a Time.
Yes.
With Rita Moreno.
Rita Moreno?
Rita Moreno.
Oh my God!
We're doing a Cuban American version of One Day at a Time, and she is the older generation. Justina Machado, who's just great, is playing the daughter, and I forget the name of the young actress who plays the granddaughter. 3 generations of Cuban Americans, and they're gorgeous and brilliant.
Yeah, and plus, black people we saved them already with TV, right? But speaking of
what
which,
are you doing? What are you doing right now? Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm so sorry, Norman Lear. I'm so sorry.
One of these examples of audacity plus acquiescence. One of these examples of audacity plus acquiescence is this. It's briefly touched on in the documentary I saw.
What's the documentary called?
Jesus Christ!
Just my bumper sticker reads "Just Another Version of You."
That's the title.
And
okay?
that's the title.
Just look at his bumper when you want to remember it.
Okay, I'm looking at it right now.
Just Google Norman Lear, you piece of shit.
Bring in the car.
Bring in the car. Bring in the car.
In between Good Times and the Jeffersons, there's this anecdote. Good Times was it literally like the first black family on television in a sitcom, at least. I mean, it was
literally in any version.
Yeah, and so there's it kind of like you got this. You have that amazing feat, which is breaking the syndrome of people are watching television and they're taking their cues. The national psyche it can change. We have a responsibility to change it, and so there's this amazing feat in terms of a writer's accountability to the public trust. And then at the same time, there's a guy on it whose catchphrase is dynamite, and there's conflict, therefore, on the set. The documentary touches just on this. It can't be an easy set of highway cones to thread. Then there's this anecdote about like 3 Black Panthers show up, come to your office and say they want to talk to the garbage man. I want to talk to Norman Lear, the garbage man. Yeah. And they storm into your office and say, Good Times is bullshit. How do you have this guy? They read you the riot act. Now, pause here, and anybody listening, put yourself in this situation. Like, how acquiescent are you going to be? You in that moment, maybe not in that moment like it's Forrest Gump, but you credit that moment as starting us down the road toward the Jeffersons. So you're still listening. You've already proven that you're the king of television at that point, and people are barging into your office to call you a garbage man, and you listened to them and took their feedback and made another great show that was great from another perspective.
What were the Panthers? What were they most because they were living in the projects, because they were downtrodden, or
they just wanted to talk about why their big bellyache was, why does the guy have to hold down 3 jobs? Since occasionally in an episode, it almost seems like he's looking for a 4th. He's so hungry to make some money to support his family, and why can't there be an affluent family on black family on television? They didn't get as far as why can't there be that, but they were pissed off that the only family that existed. The guy had to hold down 3 jobs.
And you didn't say, "Hey, you didn't get mad." You're like, "Oh, you have a point."
When they came in looking for the garbage man, I did take him over to the window and pulled the curtain aside and said, "Look down there. You see 3. We were on the 3rd floor. See down there. You see those cans and so forth. The garbage man can't be far from there." So So they. Oh, okay.
There was confusion.
But Jefferson spun off of All in the Family? Where did... Yeah, George was on All in the Family, right?
They live next door.
On All in the Family, Lionel was his good friend, and they moved in. The Jeffersons moved in next door to the Bunkers. On Maude, Esther Roll played the maid on Maude, and she was just dynamite. And
it's pronounced dynamite.
And we on Maude we introduced her husband John Amos, and the network said there's a show in those two people. So
because I mean, I was born in '73, so I was like a little kid growing up on some of your shows, and then then there was syndication and stuff that like I got to watch it all from the very beginning. But like those. This might be.
I have 51 years in this, man. Holy shit! He looks to me like a friend of my dad's.
Well, that's we drink more than you do.
It's been a long weekend. But like the beauty of those shows is that it's first and foremost the writing. I mean, obviously what the content of those shows was. But also, you have these wonderful casts that I don't like. You don't see that a lot. Like the cast of Good Times, Jefferson's, All in the Family, like the acting that went on. Also, some of the most memorable theme songs in the world. We all know every word to those for the rest of our lives. Were you involved in how you selected the themes? Or
I selected it, but I certainly wasn't involved in their creation.
Okay, but you said this is the one.
But I'd like to sing them all for you now.
They were. I mean, your shows are all characterized by something that I mean. They're like plays. I mean, you tended to.
We did them in front of a live audience like a play. They were written to play like a play.
And when we talk about multicam as a format, we talk about canned laughter and we talk about the cheesiness and the sanitized artifice of it all. But then we continue to go to that bat. At least I do. I always say, well, we haven't been doing what Norman Lear did. Why we don't have any right to shit on the multicam format until we go back to doing what you were doing. I'm curious, do you have any theories, thoughts, rants, screeds about why is it that we saw you nail it and then turned our backs so willingly? And it was working as a business model. Your shows were hits. They didn't have, they allowed for 10-second gaps of.
I could listen to the man all night.
They were plays and they were character driven and they had stories to them and you didn't think. Why is it that we went from that to what we have now?
There are a lot of shows that are paying. Modern Family is paying attention. That's about a lot of important things. It's a wonderful show, and as I say, Seth MacFarlane and
but what about
South Park?
But what about multicam sitcoms, though? Or if you...
Well, I love what's his face? What's the name of the show? Carmichael. I think Carmichael is terrific.
I haven't even heard of this. You whippersnappers come on the show.
Gerard Carmichael. He's a 28-year-old comedian. He is the centerpiece of a family, of a show. They do it live. And it's terrific.
All right, hipster.
Then there is Blackish.
But Blackish isn't multicam, right?
Made in front of a live audience. Terrific show.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll check it out. Ish.
And Wednesday night we're making the first episode of One Day at a Time.
Wow. So This ability to listen to people who barge into your office and are totally you would be entitled to not listen to them. You'd be entitled to not listen to anybody. You clearly didn't have to come here, listen to my bullshit. You're still watching other people's comedy. I'm 43 and have already started down the road of total obsolescence because I don't. Why are you so nice? Is it? Well,
what's your problem?
What are you hiding, Norman?
Here's a fact. It has taken me 93 years, a bunch of months, several weeks, a lot of days, minutes, seconds, to get to this fucking second.
It's a tough booking, this show. It is.
It has taken... Everybody who's applauding has taken every bloody second of their life to get here just to be looking in this direction at me.
So you remind yourself.
So if you add that up against my 93, I'm way ahead.
Norman,
no, but seriously, the answer to the question is living in the moment.
But that sounds like that's leading automatically to empathy, because it sounds like you're talking about you can sense you don't have to remind yourself, whereas my therapist has to remind me that they are people. Like you're by being in the moment, you're like you are them. You are the people that barge into your office and call you a garbage man. You are them. You are another version of them. That's your I figured it out.
No, I have sat here. You know how you can have 90 strains of thought in your brain at any one moment.
You can.
But again, well, then 4.
I top out at 2. I'm like, oh, holy shit, Norman Lear's here. What am I going to ask next? Those are the 2 thoughts I can hold in my head.
But I've wondered about these faces, and some I can't see back there with the lights. But, everybody has, put it this way. If you have some sense of the creator's design here, the enterprise, this being a planet among a billion, in a universe of which they say there are also billions, then can you get your fingers close enough to measure the importance or the impact of any 2 individuals? From Albert Einstein to anybody sitting here, if you appreciate that we all matter, and how much we matter, you can't, as I say, you can't get your fingers close enough to measure.
And so it may as well be
that, and living in the moment, and I don't know. I love waking up in the morning. It's my favorite. I don't have a more favorite thing.
Are you guys applauding the morning, or did you get the sense he has a heart out in here?
Norman, when like a famous person dies that is touched, do you text some of your friends and say, I love you, I just really appreciate you, and you just say David Bowie dies and you're going, oh man, it hurts me so much, and you want to reach out to your friends and say, I really appreciate you. I think that's I really, you're only going to be here for so long, and I appreciate you.
It's something he does to me every time someone dies. It could be a famous person. It could be a loved one. He texts me that he loves me. I take it as a criticism of my lifestyle.
Do you think... So I want to know which one of us is right. Yeah.
I think you're both wrong.
Okay, good.
All right.
Good.
Well, I think that's where we'll give him his freedom. Watch for One Day at a Time on Netflix. June, July. I think it's June or July. Just Google One Day at a Time Netflix, and the movie, a different version of you, is another version of you.
That'll be out in July.
July. Okay, so it's January is the Netflix thing. Yeah. I mean, everything's a Google away. Why do we do the whole plugging thing anymore? Also, it's Norman Lear. Why are we plugging Norman Lear stuff? I like to give the kids a chance. Keep them off the street. That's part of our outreach program here.
Can I just say this was great?
Oh, thank you. I hope to God that you're not just being nice.
It was worth waiting all this time for.
Yeah.
All right. Norman Lear, the legend, the icon, the human being, the son, the father, the writer,
And the
producer.
Holy Ghost.
The Holy Ghost. Coming to a theater near you and still on your television. Thank you so much.
The fellow that has to sit here holding this cannot drink at the same time.
That's, all right,
So
notes.
next time you might.
I will listen to those notes. They're coming from a good source.
Thank you, Norman. What are you guys talking about? What are you talking about over there?
Yeah. What are you guys talking about?
I like the coloring of the beard and so on. And I told him that if the animals were collecting us, he'd be a prize.
Yeah.
All right.
Just sit back down. Just stay. Stay forever. Don't leave us.
Norman Lear. All right.
Unbelievable.
I like his style.
I don't want him to go. I'm sad now.
I know. I like his style. I'm going to dress like that.
I think it's weird that he thinks about animals collecting people, though. That's a weird instinct.
Hopefully he'll come back and we can just expound on that.
I mean, isn't that something that somebody would say if that was a person that collects people? Like he has a bunch of heads on his wall?
If anyone could get away with it.
You have a collectible face.
That new Russell Crowe movie with him and Ryan Gosling, you look just like him. He's starting to look more like you day by day.
Shots fired, Russell Crowe. But I want to hit the gym.
Was that? I wanted to ask Norman Lear about the Underoos situation in the Avengers trailer.
That's Stan Lee, you fucking asshole.
You don't know it isn't.
He got Norman Lear mixed up with Stan.
I did not.
I thought that was your joke.
No.
Okay. Anyways.
I wanted to know if he pays attention to that stuff.
Sinatra. He yelled at Sinatra on the phone. What? World War II, a little thing called World War II.
We could have talked about
it's impossible to... It's impossible.
What did he? He flew like in
Ask me some
he flew in
stuff.
bombers or something like that?
Yeah, he was in one of those fucking things.
He bombed Germany. Yeah,
I think he might have been in the other theater. I can't remember.
Theater of War.
Was it Japan?
Why do they call them theaters, by the way? So creepy.
Because always make an entrance.
Yeah.
It was.
And never be the first to leave. Whatever.
It's where we got. It used to be. Break a leg used to be blow off a leg.
Gross.
All right.